What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Here we are with another reaction. In this, we have how the Netherlands became a living hell. What? That's not what I hear when I react to these videos every day from people that have gone to the Netherlands and now want to move to the Netherlands or have already moved. I'm not living it. We're gonna find out what this video's got to say, and then I want to hear what y'all got to say. Because I know y'all can't be too happy with that title already. Before we dive in, though, if you guys happen to enjoy, don't forget to subscribe, give it a thumbs up. Also, if you like to support the channel further, all you gotta do is hit that join button, become a member, get your exclusive benefits. Let's get to it.
The Netherlands is celebrated for its fairness, but the system is failing. Housing protests have amassed huge turnouts. The Dutch have a unique housing market, of which social housing is a cornerstone. They have by far the largest share of social housing in the developed world. About a third of all homes are kept off the market to be managed by an NGO. Their goal is not to make money, but to provide affordable rental homes. And the
Netherlands. This, maybe I'm tripping. This sounds amazing to me. To provide affordable rental homes, like I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people that want to get in those affordable rental homes, and once you're out, that's going to be tough. But 34% social housing. It sounds good to me. He may talk more and tell me more. It may change my mind and be like, oh, okay, well, I can see why this much social housing is actually a problem. But so far, I mean, that sounds good to me.
eligibility requirements are met by 40% of the population.
There's your problem.
But whenever there is a housing protest, a common demand is to add even more social housing, to make them even more accessible. But despite the...
What did I tell you? You know, 34%, when you run out, people are going to want more. 40% qualify for social housing. You only have 34% that are so. And so you run into those situations where people are going to be upset because they can't afford their bills, they can't afford their rent, and they see this social housing and they qualify, yet they can't access it. And then you're gonna have the other people that are paying these high bills upset because, like, why do they get to have affordable housing? But I'm speaking on how it would be if it was in the U.S. Netherlands is much more, I feel like, community based than the U.S. is more individualistic. So I don't know. Let's continue.
Already having the largest share of social housing, they also have the most overburdened rental market in the developed world.
Really?
25% of Dutch citizens spend more than 40% of their income on rent. Something is clearly not working, and I want to find out what it is.
Over 25% spending. But I wonder what the statistics would be here. Because to be honest, in this day and age, that's how it's starting to feel. Like, I wonder what this is. I don't feel like the U.S. would fare much better in those numbers.
Is why the Dutch are in deep trouble with hindsight. Over the past years, major protests have erupted.
Het gaat over de basis van de mens en dat is een huis.
Dat willen we eruit halen, de sociale woningbouw komt.
The goal of these protesters is often to add more social housing to the existing housing stock.
Yeah.
And that seems to make sense on a gut level.
Yeah.
But I want to look at the whole picture. So I went into the archives and I pulled up some of the most interesting statistics, and I found a lot of really eye-opening things. To understand the long-term trend, it's important that we start by understanding how the housing market took shape.
Thank you. I gotta see it.
Around the mid-1850s, the working class was moving to the cities to work in factories. In just 3 decades, the population of cities like Amsterdam, Rotterdam, and The Hague more than doubled. But living conditions were often poor. This affected the productivity and health of workers. So some entrepreneurs started woningbouwverenigingen, housing associations. These were privately owned companies with shareholders. There existed some 200 of them, and by the turn of the century, they provided about 10,000 families with homes. It was still a small segment of housing, but that would change.
Behind are the grim years of famine and oppression. The bands play and the people welcome the dawn of a free new day.
World War II left the country in ruins. Of all Dutch homes, nearly a fifth was damaged and tens of thousands were heavily damaged or destroyed. There was a massive shortage of homes, or woningnood, how the Dutch called it. 250,000 homes were needed. The government was tasked with a momentous challenge, but they had an idea. Housing associations had primarily existed to house workers, but the government placed them under tight supervision, and they provided billions in funding to let them supply hundreds of thousands of affordable homes for all Dutch citizens.
There you go. See, I feel like the Dutch are always gonna figure it out. I feel like you get a Dutch a problem, bro. Solution's gonna be it's not gonna be far behind, bro. I feel like just very innovative.
To a building frenzy. Between 1950 and 1980, they added 2.5 million new homes, almost doubling the entire housing stock. The shortage of homes now dropped from around 300,000 in 1945 to about 75,000 in 1970. Housing associations played a crucial part of this, and they were basically an extension of the government. But after the housing shortage was somewhat relieved, they started to liberalize. One of their goals was to encourage homeownership. In 1945, most people were still living in a privately rented apartment. Over the years, this figure dropped substantially to just 19%. Homeownership had become more common. This was encouraged by the government, amongst other things, with the
homeownership must have been very affordable for that many people to own a home. Good jobs, affordable homes. And I think that's the issue and that's why even with 34% social housing, the people want more. It's just the inflation has gotten out of hand, yet salaries haven't increased with the inflation. So these days you're still getting paid what they got paid way back when, yet you're expected to pay almost 2 to 3 times what they had to pay back then. And so it's that's why there's so many people upset. We can't afford it. It continues to rise because there's so many people in demand who are in need, that these people in charge can continue raising these housing prices and these rental prices. It's just insanity.
hypotheekrenteaftrek, a tax break for homeowners. Over that same period, social housing had become a major segment of the housing stock, making up 43% of all homes at its peak in 1989. The transition to widespread social housing had cost the government billions, and in the 1980s and 90s, many felt that it was time for these associations to stand on their own feet. The government cut their funding, and from the mid-1990s and onwards, they started operating as non-profit private businesses. They had a social mission to provide affordable housing, but were now operating without any subsidies.
So in many socialist countries, these types of homes are owned by the state, whereas in countries like the United States, housing is almost entirely driven by the market. But the Dutch created a hybrid model.
Non-profit housing operated with market-oriented principles. So how did it go wrong? So the only reason why we can make these videos is because we have sponsors. They help us pay for editors.
I'm gonna skip the sponsor. I don't be a fan of the sponsorships. Or watching, I guess. All right, here we go.
Housing was historically considered a social good, but it became a tool for building wealth.
So I mentioned that tax break for homeowners, and that's a good example.
It was originally conceived to encourage people to buy a home. If you buy a house for $500,000 and get a typical 30-year mortgage with a 4% interest rate, you pay about €360,000 in interest, which was made tax deductible. Homeowners, while paying off their mortgage, save over €130,000 in taxes.
That's great if you own your house, but here's the problem.
You got a major tax break, but your neighbor who rents a similar house didn't get any of that. In other words, the system drives inequality between people who own and people who rent.
For
And that's just
sure.
a small piece of the puzzle.
For sure.
Social housing exists for the
That's
40% of
crazy. Dang, that to get that kind of tax break. You bait so you knocked out the interest base. The interest is a tax break, right? And so you're just paying for the house. You're not paying the interest for the house because if you write it off on your taxes, you're not having to spend that money. So a house that would have cost you $860,000 over 30 years now costs you $500,000 because the interest is tax deductible. That's crazy. But yeah, I mean, who wouldn't go out and try to get a home for that with that kind of tax break?
people with the lowest incomes. Housing associations build and manage these homes, and the first years after being deregulated were ridden with scandal.
Or
De Rotterdam voeren de nieuwe waterweg uit.
This is the SS Rotterdam, a cruise ship that was launched in 1958. It has since traveled the world until, after decades of service in 2000, it was time to retire.
dang.
So what does this have to do with housing? Nothing.
But a major housing association in Rotterdam purchased this ship for 30 million euros. They started renovations with the idea to convert it into a hotel and a tourist attraction.
That's
This
pretty
raised a
cool.
lot of eyebrows because the mission of a social housing organization is to provide affordable housing. Don't forget, they're a non-profit. So why would they get involved with this kind of projects?
But then
It's the
they had an
ship.
unexpected setback.
Oh.
They believed that they would spend about 6 million euros for the renovation, but it ended up costing 256 million.
These stories led to a debate about whether housing associations
Six. Hold up, y'all. My wife is sick.